Hey, I'm glad to see you here. I've prepared something special for you today, a comprehensive list of actually useful advanced vocabulary, not just random hard words nobody will understand. Whether you're preparing for IELTS, TOEFL, or you simply want to broaden your active vocabulary, this video is for you. And listen, you can even learn all of this while you sleep. I've prepared a document that you can download with the words, with the definitions, and with the examples, and you can find it in the links below. Now, without any further ado, let's learn some advanced vocabulary.
Adversity. Adversity means a hard or difficult situation, like a really tough problem you have to solve. It's like when you are trying to ride a bike for the first time and you keep falling down. That's adversity because it's a challenge you have to overcome. Here's an example sentence. Even though Sarah faced the adversity of being the smallest player, she practiced every day and became the best player on the basketball team. Aggregate. Aggregate is like when you collect different things and put them together. It's like when you pick up different seashells from the beach and put them all together in one pile. Here's an example sentence. Luke had an aggregate of different stickers from around the world, showing all the places he had visited. Algorithm. Algorithm is like a recipe for solving a problem. It's a set of instructions you follow to get something done. Let's say you're making your bed. First, you might straighten the sheets, then the blanket, and finally, you arrange your pillows. That's your algorithm, or steps, for making your bed. Here's an example sentence. Tina followed the algorithm for doing her math homework. First, she reviewed the lesson, then she solved the example problems, and lastly, she did the exercises. Allegory. Allegory is like a big story where everything, characters, places, and events, stands for something else. It's like when you pretend that your toys are real people, and you create an exciting adventure for them. In that adventure, each toy might represent something like kindness, bravery, or even greed. Here's an example sentence. In the children's book, The Peaceful Village of Animals was an allegory for a perfect society where everyone lived happily and worked together. Alleviate. Alleviate is like making something that is hard or painful a little bit easier or less painful. It's like when you have a bad headache and you take medicine to make it feel better. The medicine alleviates the pain. Here's an example sentence. When Mom saw that Jenny was scared of the dark, she turned on a night light to alleviate her fear. Ambiguous. Ambiguous means something is unclear or can be understood in more than one way. It's like if your friend tells you, "I saw a bat," but you don't know if they mean a baseball bat or the flying animal bat. That's ambiguous because it could mean two different things. Here's an example sentence. The end of the movie was ambiguous. We couldn't tell if the main character had just been dreaming the whole time or if it really happened. Ambivalence. Ambivalence is like when you feel two different ways about the same thing at the same time. It's like when you find a wallet full of money. Part of you might want to keep the money, and the other part of you knows it would be right to try to return the wallet to its owner. That's ambivalence because you're torn between two feelings. Here's an example sentence. Emma felt ambivalence about the big city. She loved the excitement and opportunities it offered, but she also missed the tranquility and familiarity of her small hometown. Amend. Amend is like when you change something to make it better or correct. It's like when you draw a picture but you make a mistake, so you erase the mistake and redraw it correctly. That's called amending your drawing. Here's an example sentence. After receiving feedback from his teacher, Tim amended his essay by adding more details to his arguments. Anew. Anew is like starting over again or doing something in a different way. It's like building a tower with your toys, but it falls over. So, you start building it anew, which means you start building it again from the beginning. Here's an example sentence. After the cake she was baking didn't turn out well, Lisa decided to start anew and carefully followed the recipe step by step. Annihilation. Annihilation is like when everything gets destroyed or wiped out. Imagine you're playing with building blocks and then you or someone else knocks them down so there's nothing left standing. That's annihilation, because the building you made is completely gone. Here's an example sentence. In the video game, his character faced total annihilation when the supervillain unleashed his power, leaving no buildings standing in the city. Annulment. Annulment is like when something that has happened is said to have never really happened at all, like it's erased or cancelled out. Let's say you played a game, but the rules weren't followed correctly. So, the result of that game could be given an annulment, which means it's like the game was never played. Here's an example sentence. Because they realized they made a big mistake, the couple decided to get an annulment, which made it as if their marriage never legally happened. Apathy. Apathy is when you don't feel interested or excited about anything, or when you don't care much about what's happening around you. It's like if it's a beautiful sunny day outside and your friends ask you to go play, but you just shrug and say you'd rather sit inside. That could be apathy because you don't seem to care about going outside or having fun. Here's an example sentence. Even with the circus in town, Jake showed apathy and just stayed in his room playing video games. A prize. A prize is like when you tell somebody something important or give them information they need to know. It's like when your teacher tells you when the next test will be so you can study and be prepared. Here's an example sentence. The principal called a meeting to apprise the teachers of the changes in the school's safety protocols. Appease. Appease is when you try to make someone less angry or upset by giving them what they want. It's like if your little brother is crying because he wants to play with your toy, and you let him have it just so he'll stop crying. That's you trying to appease him. Here's an example sentence. To appease the crying child in the car, her mom gave her a lollipop to keep her quiet for the rest of the ride. Archaism. Archaism is like using old or ancient words that are not in common use anymore. For example, the words thee and thou. These words were used in Old English to mean you, but we don't use them in everyday conversation today. Here's an example sentence. Reading Shakespeare's plays often requires a dictionary because they contain archaisms, such as thou and hast, that are not frequently used in modern English. Archetype. An archetype is like a popular kind of character that shows up a lot in stories. For instance, the superhero is an archetype. Superheroes are often characters who have special powers and use them to save the day. Here's an example sentence. In comic books, the archetype of a caped superhero fighting against evil is a common theme that excites readers of all ages. Arouse. Arouse is like when you wake up something that was sleeping or not active. It's not just for waking up from sleep though. It's like when something makes you feel interested or excited. Suppose you see a poster for a new movie with your favorite actor. That poster might arouse your interest in watching the movie. Here's an example sentence. The book's mysterious title aroused his curiosity, and he decided to start reading right away. Assertion. Assertion is when you say something strongly, believing it's true. It's like when you're sure your friend took your favorite pen and you say, "I know you took my pen." That's an assertion because you're saying it with conviction, like you're really sure about it. Here's an example sentence. Despite his sister's denial, Max's assertion that she had borrowed his bicycle without asking remained unshaken. Assumption. Assumption is like thinking something is true or will happen, even though you don't have definite proof. It's like if you leave your sandwich on the table and when you come back it's gone, you might make the assumption that your big brother took it, even if you didn't actually see him do it. Here's an example sentence. Under the assumption that it was going to rain, Jenny carried her umbrella to school, but the sky remained clear all day. Attendee. Attendee is like a guest or someone who goes to an event or a place. It's like when you go to a birthday party, you are an attendee of that party because you are there participating in it. Here's an example sentence. As an attendee of the science fair, Maria got to see all of the exciting experiments and presentations. Avail. Avail is like using something helpful or beneficial. It's like when you have a library card and you use it to borrow books. When you borrow books, you avail yourself of the library's resources, which means you use them because they're helpful to you. Here's an example sentence. John decided to avail himself of the free tutoring offered by his school to improve his math skills. Banter. Banter is like playful, friendly talk. It's like when you and your friend are joking around and laughing together. That's banter because it's fun and not serious. Here's an example sentence. The siblings' banter at the dinner table brought smiles to everyone and made the meal more enjoyable. Beforehand. Beforehand is like doing something before another thing happens. It's like when you pack your bag for school the night before. That's doing something beforehand because you are preparing for school before it actually starts. Here's an example sentence. She prepared all of her painting materials beforehand so she could start painting as soon as she felt inspired. Benevolent. Benevolent is a big word that means being good and kind to others. It's like when you give some of your lunch to a friend who forgot theirs. That's a benevolent act because you're helping someone else. Here's an example sentence. The benevolent woman often volunteered at the local food bank, generously giving her time to help others. Bewilder. Bewilder is like when you're so confused about something it's like you're lost in a big maze and can't find your way out. Maybe you're trying to solve a really tough math problem and you just can't figure it out. You could say the problem bewilders you. Here's an example sentence. The complex instructions for the science experiment bewildered the young students, so they asked their teacher for help. Bias. Bias is like preferring one color more than others just because it's your favorite, even if all colors are equally beautiful. If you always choose to wear blue clothes simply because blue is your favorite color, that's a bias. Here's an example sentence. The artist had a clear bias towards pastel colors, as they were prominently featured in all of his paintings. Cajole. Cajole is like when you really want a pet puppy, so you keep telling your parents all the good things about having a puppy. It's cute, it's fun, and it can keep you company. You're trying to cajole your parents into getting you a puppy. Here's an example sentence. Sarah cajoled her parents into buying her a guitar by promising to practice every day and keep her grades up at school. Camaraderie. Camaraderie is like the feeling of friendship and trust you have with people you spend a lot of time with. It's like the fun times, laughs, and the teamwork you share with your friends on your soccer team. That's camaraderie. Here's an example sentence. Even though the camping trip was challenging, it built a strong sense of camaraderie among the scouts. Candor. Candor is like when you are honest and tell the truth, even if it's a bit hard. It's like when a friend asks if you like their new haircut, and you tell them the truth, you don't really like it. That's candor because you're being truthful without being mean. Here's an example sentence. Her candor was appreciated when she tactfully expressed her opinion about the project. Catharsis. Catharsis is like a big emotional release or relief. Think about when you're watching a really sad movie and you cry at the end. Those tears can actually make you feel better because you're letting out your feelings. That's a catharsis. Here's an example sentence. Reading the touching novel provided a catharsis for her, and she found herself crying and feeling relieved at the end. Coercion. Coercion is like when someone tries to force you to do something you don't want to do. It's like when a bigger kid at school tells you to give them your lunch or else they'll take your favorite toy. That's coercion because they're trying to make you do something by threatening or scaring you. Here's an example sentence. The teacher put a stop to the coercion when she caught the older students trying to take the younger students' snacks. Cognitive. Cognitive is like anything that has to do with thinking and understanding. It's like when you solve a puzzle or learn something new in school. Your brain is doing cognitive work because it's thinking and understanding. Here's an example sentence. The teacher planned several cognitive activities for the students, such as solving math problems and reading comprehension exercises. Coincide. Coincide is like when two things happen at the same time or in the same place. It's like when you're walking down the street, and just as you reach your best friend's house, they walk out the door. Your arrivals coincide because they happened at the same time. Here's an example sentence. The end of the school year was set to coincide with the start of the summer camp, enabling the kids to transition smoothly from one to the other. Concede. Concede is like when you admit that something is true, correct, or that you've lost. It's like when you're playing a game of checkers and it's clear that you're about to lose, so you concede the game to the other player, meaning you admit that they've won. Here's an example sentence. Even though he knew he was wrong about the capital of Canada, it was hard for Max to concede the point to his younger sister. Condescending. Condescending is when someone talks to you in a way that makes you feel like they think they're better or smarter than you. It's like if an older person talks to you like you're a baby, even though you're not, and it feels like they're treating you as if you don't understand anything. That's being condescending. Here's an example sentence. The way he explained the game in a slow, exaggerated manner felt condescending to the other players who knew the rules just as well. Conformity. Conformity is like when you do the same things as other people because you want to fit in with them. It's like when all your friends are wearing a certain style of shoes, and you get the same ones so you can be like them. That's conformity because you're doing what everyone else is doing. Here's an example sentence. At the new school, Anna felt the pressure of conformity when she noticed that nearly all the students dressed in similar fashion. Congruence. Congruence is like when two things match up or are the same in some way. It's like if you and a friend both draw a picture of the same tree. If your drawings look really similar, you could say there's congruence between them. Here's an example sentence. The congruence between the twins' tastes was astonishing. From their favorite foods to their choice of books, they liked all the same things. Connotation. Connotation is like the feelings or ideas that a word makes you think of, in addition to its actual meaning. If someone says home, the word might make you think of warmth, family, and comfort. Those feelings are the word's connotation. Here's an example sentence. The word adventure has a positive connotation, often making people think of fun, excitement, and new experiences. Construe. Construe is like when you interpret or understand something in a particular way. It's like when you read a book and you understand the story in your own way, maybe differently from your friend who read the same book. You construe the story in your own way, based on how you understand it. Here's an example sentence. Even though the poem was difficult to understand, Lisa construed the underlying message to be one of hope and resilience. Credulous. Credulous is like when someone easily believes things, even if they might not be true. Imagine if your friend told you a story about seeing a unicorn in their backyard. If you believed them without question, that would be credulous because unicorns aren't real, but you believed it anyway. Here's an example sentence. His younger brother was so credulous that he believed the cookies had been taken by a mischievous cookie monster. Demeanor. Demeanor is like your outer style or attitude that people see. Imagine you're playing a game and you're determined to win. You're serious, focused, and giving it your best. Your demeanor in that moment is competitive. Here's an example sentence. His confident demeanor during the job interview left a good impression on the hiring managers. Denounce. Denounce is like when you publicly say something or someone is bad or wrong. It's like if someone in your class cheats on a test, and you tell the teacher because you think cheating is wrong. That's denouncing the person who cheated. Here's an example sentence. The mayor was quick to denounce the actions of the vandals who had defaced the city park. Deprivation. Deprivation is like when you're really tired because you didn't get enough sleep. Not getting enough sleep is a type of sleep deprivation because you're missing the rest your body needs. Here's an example sentence. After staying up late studying for exams all week, Jake was experiencing serious sleep deprivation. Digression. Digression is like when you're supposed to be talking about one thing but you start talking about something else instead. Let's say you're presenting a report about whales in class, but then start talking about your vacation to the beach. That's a digression because you're going off topic. Here's an example sentence. Though his essay was well written, his occasional digressions into personal anecdotes lessened the overall impact of his argument. Diligent. Diligent is like when you work very hard and pay a lot of attention to what you're doing. It's like when you have a big test coming up and you study a little bit every day, making sure you understand everything. That's being diligent because you're being careful and persistent in your work. Here's an example sentence. Her diligent practice every day after school made her one of the best piano players in her class. Disclose. Disclose is like revealing important or confidential information. For instance, when a company shares its financial reports to its investors, it's disclosing information. Here's an example sentence. The CEO had to disclose the financial status of the company to the shareholders in the annual meeting. Docile. Docile is like being very calm and easy to control. It's like a pet who follows instructions well and doesn't cause any trouble. For example, a dog that always sits when told and never chews on the furniture could be described as docile. Here's an example sentence. The docile horse was perfect for beginner riders as it followed commands without any trouble. Doctrine. Doctrine is like a big, important rule or set of rules that a group of people believe in and follow. It's like the rules of a game that everyone agrees to play by. For example, a school might have a doctrine that everyone should be kind and respectful to each other. Here's an example sentence. The doctrine of empathy and respect for all was a core principle at the community center. Duplicity. Duplicity is like when someone is deceitful or dishonest, often by saying one thing and doing another. It's like when a friend promises to help you on a project but never shows up, and you later learn they went to a movie instead. That's duplicity because they didn't keep their promise and were not straightforward about their intentions. Here's an example sentence. He was hurt by his friend's duplicity after finding out that the secret he had shared was now common knowledge among their peers. Eloquent. Eloquent is a term that describes expressiveness and persuasive speech or writing. It's often used to describe someone who can express thoughts, ideas, or arguments effectively, with clarity and grace. An eloquent person or piece of writing has the ability to convince or move the audience, often touching their emotions. Here's an example sentence. The author's eloquent words painted a vivid picture of the setting, making the readers feel as though they were actually there. Emancipation. Emancipation is like when you are released from control or influence of another person or entity. It's often used in a historical context to refer to the freeing of slaves. But it can also describe any situation where a person gains freedom or independence. For example, when teenagers reach the age of majority and are legally free from parental control, it can also be considered a form of emancipation. Here's an example sentence. With the final payment on her car loan, Lisa felt a sense of emancipation, knowing she now fully owned her vehicle. Embezzle. Embezzle is like when someone dishonestly takes money that they were trusted to manage for personal use. It's often used in terms of theft carried out by employees in a business or public office. For example, if an accountant secretly redirects some company funds into their personal account, they're embezzling that money. Here's an example sentence. The auditor discovered that the CFO had been embezzling funds from the company for years to finance his luxurious lifestyle. Empirical. Empirical is like something that is based on testing or experience rather than just ideas or theories. It's often used in science to refer to information that has been discovered through observation or experiment. For example, if a scientist conducts experiments to test a theory and makes conclusions based on the results of those experiments, the findings are empirical. Here's an example sentence. Her empirical research provided hard evidence that the medication was more effective than previously believed. Enigma. Enigma is like a puzzle or a mystery. It's something that's difficult to understand or explain. It's like a riddle that you can't figure out the answer to, or a person whose thoughts and actions you can't predict or understand. Here's an example sentence. Despite being together for years, her sudden decision to move to a different country was an enigma to everyone who knew her. Epitome. Epitome is a term that describes a person or thing that is a perfect example of a particular quality or type. It refers to a representative or example of a class or type. Here's an example sentence. With her grace, talent, and humility, she is seen as the epitome of an outstanding athlete. Euphemism. Euphemism is a term that describes a polite or indirect expression used in place of words or phrases that might otherwise be considered harsh or unpleasant to hear. It's like when we say passed away instead of died, or let go instead of fired from a job. Here's an example sentence. Instead of saying that someone was fired, the company stated that the person was given an opportunity to explore new ventures, which is a euphemism to soften the impact. Exaggeration. Exaggeration is like when you make something seem more important, serious, or larger than it really is. It's often used to make stories more interesting or to emphasize a point. For example, if you caught a fish and tell everyone it was the size of a shark when it was really an average-sized fish, you're using exaggeration. Here's an example sentence. Despite his tendency for exaggeration, his friends found his tales of travel entertaining. Extrapolate. Extrapolate is like when you take what you know and use it to make an educated guess about what will happen next or in a different situation. It's often used in mathematics or science when making predictions based on data. For example, if a car is traveling at a consistent speed, you could extrapolate to predict how far the car will travel in a certain amount of time based on its current speed. Here's an example sentence. Based on the current economic growth rates, she was able to extrapolate that the company's profits would likely double within the next 5 years. Frenzy. Frenzy is like a state of wild excitement or chaos. It's like the scene at a concert when the main band comes on stage and the crowd goes wild, jumping and cheering. That's a frenzy because it's a disorderly and excited burst of activity. Here's an example sentence. When the winner of the lottery was announced, the city was thrown into a frenzy of excitement and speculation. Fret. Fret is like when you worry or feel uneasy about something. It might be about an upcoming test, an important decision, or a change in your life. It's like when you can't stop thinking about whether or not it will rain and ruin your outdoor plans for the weekend. Here's an example sentence. Despite her mother's reassurance, Emily couldn't help but fret about the results of her scholarship application. Frivolous. Frivolous is like something that is not serious or important. It's often used to describe actions that are unnecessary or done merely for fun or pleasure. For example, spending money on an expensive gadget that you don't need just because it looks cool could be considered a frivolous purchase. Here's an example sentence. His frivolous spending on luxury items did not leave him with much savings at the end of the month. Frugal. Frugal is like being careful with money or resources and avoiding waste. It can involve thinking carefully about purchases, avoiding unnecessary expenses, and making efforts to save resources. For instance, a person who packs a homemade lunch instead of eating out to save money can be described as being frugal. Here's an example sentence. Her frugal lifestyle allowed her to save a considerable amount of money for her future. Frustration. Frustration is like feeling upset or annoyed because you're unable to do something, reach a goal, or solve a problem. It's like when you're working on a tough puzzle and you can't find the piece you need, or when you're stuck in traffic and running late. Both situations can lead to feelings of frustration. Here's an example sentence. She could not hide her frustration when the computer program she had been working on all day crashed without saving her work. Galvanize. Galvanize is like inspiring or exciting people to take action. It's often used to describe a leader or an event that brings about a strong reaction or response. For example, a powerful speech can galvanize supporters to participate in a cause. Here's an example sentence. The coach's passionate speech at halftime galvanized the team to give their best in the second half of the game. Grimace. Grimace is like a facial expression that shows pain, disgust, or disapproval. It's like when you taste something really sour or bitter and you can't help but make a face showing your discomfort or dislike for the taste. Here's an example sentence. When he tried the overly sweet dessert, he couldn't hide his grimace of distaste. Gullible. Gullible is like when someone is easily fooled or persuaded to believe something, even when it might not be true. For example, if your friend tells you there's an elephant in your backyard and you rush to check without a second thought, you're showing gullibility. Here's an example sentence. Because of his gullible nature, he often fell for his friend's pranks and jokes. Inauguration. Inauguration is like a formal ceremony to mark the beginning of something important, often referring to the formal admission of someone into office. It's like when a new president or a prime minister takes office, there's usually an inauguration ceremony to mark this important event. Here's an example sentence. People from all across the country traveled to the capital to witness the president's inauguration. Inconsequential. Inconsequential is like something that is not important or without significant impact. It's like when you're baking a cake and you forget to add a decoration on top. While the decoration might make the cake look fancier, its absence is inconsequential because it doesn't change the flavor of the cake. Here's an example sentence. Even though he forgot to mention a minor detail in his report, it was largely inconsequential to the overall understanding of the project. Infuse. Infuse is like when you add a quality or feeling into something. It's often used when talking about adding one thing to another so that it becomes filled or saturated with it. For example, you might infuse tea with lemon flavor by adding lemon slices, or a movie might be infused with humor to make it funnier. Here's an example sentence. The teacher tried to infuse the science lessons with fun and creativity to increase the students' interest. Initiation. Initiation is like the act of starting something, whether it's a process, an event, or an action. It can also refer to a ceremony or rite that marks the admission into a group or society. For example, when a new project begins at work or when a new member joins a club and goes through a welcoming ritual, both are forms of initiation. Here's an example sentence. The initiation of the charity drive started with a grand event to raise awareness and funds. Injunction. An injunction is like a court order that either commands someone to do something or forbids them from doing something. It's often used in legal contexts to protect a person's rights or to prevent potential harm. For example, if a person is harassing someone else, a court might issue an injunction telling them to stop. Here's an example sentence. The city placed an injunction against the company, prohibiting it from cutting down any more trees in the area. Insinuate. Insinuate is like suggesting or hinting at something indirectly, often in a sly or sneaky way. When you insinuate, you're trying to get your point across without directly saying what you mean. For instance, if a friend continually mentions how much they love a particular type of cake, they may be trying to insinuate that they'd like you to bake it for their birthday. Here's an example sentence. Through his offhand comments about the importance of punctuality, he insinuated that his friend was always late. Intervention. Intervention is like an action taken to improve or help a situation. It's like when a teacher helps a student who is falling behind in their studies, or when a family member organizes a meeting to help a loved one struggling with unhealthy habits. In both cases, they are intervening to assist and make a positive change. Here's an example sentence. When it became clear that he was struggling with his coursework, an academic intervention was arranged to provide him with extra help. Juxtaposition. Juxtaposition is like placing two things side by side, usually to make a comparison or highlight the contrast. It's like when you put a photo of a city skyline next to a photo of a peaceful countryside. The juxtaposition helps highlight the differences between urban and rural settings. Here's an example sentence. The artist used the juxtaposition of light and dark shades to give depth to his painting. Lobbying. Lobbying is like when someone tries to influence a politician or public official on a specific issue. It's often done to change a law, create new legislation, or sway public policy in a particular direction. When a group sends representatives to meet with a senator to advocate for an environmental cause, they are lobbying. Here's an example sentence. The nonprofit's lobbying efforts were focused on convincing lawmakers to address the issue of climate change in their upcoming policies. Longevity. Longevity is like the length of time that something lasts, often referring to life. It is often used to talk about people living a long life. For example, if someone lives to be over 100 years old, we might speak of their longevity. Here's an example sentence. Maintaining a balanced diet and regular exercise are often linked to increased longevity. Ludicrous. Ludicrous is like something that is so absurd, ridiculous, or unbelievable that it makes you laugh. It's like if someone suggested that elephants could fly without wings or magic. The idea is so outlandish, it's ludicrous. Here's an example sentence. The idea of a dog driving a car was so ludicrous that it made everyone in the room burst out laughing. Lucid. Lucid is like being clear, understandable, or easy to comprehend. It can describe a thought, a piece of writing, or even a person's state of mind. If an explanation is easy to understand, it's lucid. If someone is thinking clearly, they're having a lucid moment. Here's an example sentence. Despite the complexity of the topic, the professor's lucid explanation helped students grasp the concept easily. Maddening. Maddening is like something that is extremely annoying or irritating, to the point that it makes you feel slightly crazy. It's like when a fly keeps buzzing around your head no matter how many times you try to shoo it away. That's maddening because it's persistently bothersome. Here's an example sentence. The maddening drone of the construction work outside made it almost impossible for her to concentrate on her studies. Memorandum. A memorandum is like a written message or report, usually used in a business or formal setting. It's like when your boss sends out a printed or emailed message to all employees about an upcoming meeting or policy change. That message is a memorandum. Here's an example sentence. The manager distributed a memorandum to all staff members detailing the new procedures for requesting time off. Metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that compares two unrelated things, highlighting the similarities between them to create a deeper understanding or evoke a vivid image. Here's an example sentence. Her laughter was a melody, filling the room with joy. Moratorium. A moratorium refers to a temporary suspension or halt on a specific activity or practice, often put in place by an authority or governing body. Here's an example sentence. The government declared a moratorium on new construction permits in the flood-affected areas until further notice. Mundane. Mundane refers to something that is ordinary, commonplace, or lacking in excitement or interest. Here's an example sentence. After the excitement of the vacation, returning to the mundane routine of daily chores was quite a contrast. Mutter. Mutter is often used to describe the act of speaking or uttering words in a low, indistinct, and grumbling manner, typically expressing discontent, frustration, or dissatisfaction. Here's an example sentence. When confronted with a difficult task, he would mutter to himself, expressing his annoyance at the challenge ahead. Nonchalant. Nonchalant refers to a state of being coolly unconcerned or indifferent, often displaying a casual and relaxed attitude. Here's an example sentence. Even in the face of a high-pressure situation, she remained nonchalant, as if nothing could faze her. Novice. A novice refers to someone who is new or inexperienced in a particular skill, activity, or field. Here's an example sentence. As a novice cook, she followed the recipe step by step to ensure her first attempt at baking was successful. Obfuscation. Obfuscation refers to the act of making something unclear, confusing, or difficult to understand. Here's an example sentence. The politician's deliberate use of complex language and obfuscation made it challenging for the audience to grasp the true meaning of his statements. Oblivion. Oblivion refers to a state of being completely forgotten, ignored, or unknown. Here's an example sentence. After years of neglect, the once famous actor faded into oblivion, leaving behind a legacy that only a few remembered. Opaque. Opaque refers to something that is not transparent or clear, making it difficult to see through or understand. Here's an example sentence. The meaning of the poem remained opaque to most readers, leaving them pondering its hidden depths. Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy refers to a set of beliefs, principles, or doctrines that are widely accepted or conform to traditional standards. Here's an example sentence. The new book challenges the orthodoxy of the medical community by presenting alternative approaches to healing. Outlier. Outlier refers to a data point or observation that significantly deviates from the average or expected pattern in a dataset. It is an exceptional value that lies far away from the rest of the data points, often indicating a unique or unusual occurrence. Example sentence. In the analysis of stock market returns, the researcher identified a few outliers that skewed the overall distribution, suggesting the presence of atypical market behavior during those periods. Oxymoron. Oxymoron refers to a figure of speech that combines two contradictory or opposite terms to create a unique and often thought-provoking phrase. It is a rhetorical device used to convey a deeper meaning or establish a contrast. Example sentence. The phrase bittersweet is an oxymoron because it combines the contradictory terms of bitter and sweet to describe a complex and conflicting emotional experience. Paradigm. Paradigm refers to a framework, model, or set of theories and assumptions that shapes how we understand and interpret a particular subject or phenomenon. It provides a way of thinking and organizing knowledge within a specific discipline or field. Example sentence. The discovery of DNA as the genetic material brought about a significant shift in the scientific paradigm, revolutionizing our understanding of heredity and genetics. Perfidious. Perfidious is an adjective that describes someone who is deceitful, untrustworthy, or disloyal. It refers to a person's tendency to betray or break their promises and commitments. Example sentence. The perfidious actions of the corrupt politician shocked the nation, as he was revealed to have accepted bribes and manipulated the legal system for personal gain. Perpetual. Perpetual is an adjective that describes something that is continuous, everlasting, or occurring repeatedly without interruption. It suggests a state of permanence, enduring over an indefinite period of time. Example sentence: the perpetual motion machine was designed to generate energy indefinitely without any external input, but it ultimately proved to be impossible according to the laws of physics. Plethora. Plethora is a noun that describes an excessive or abundant amount of something. It refers to a large or excessive quantity, often used to emphasize an overwhelming or excessive presence of things. Example sentence: the buffet table was filled with a plethora of delicious dishes, ranging from appetizers to main courses, leaving the guests spoiled for choice. Polemic. Polemic refers to a strong, passionate, and controversial argument or debate about a particular topic. It is often characterized by the use of aggressive language and a desire to attack or criticize opposing viewpoints. Example sentence: the author's latest book ignited a polemic in the literary community, as critics and readers engaged in fierce debates over its social and political implications. Postulate. Postulate can be used as a noun or a verb and refers to a proposition, assumption, or principle that is accepted or assumed as true without proof. It is often used in the context of scientific, mathematical, or philosophical theories as a starting point for further analysis or investigation. Example sentence: in geometry, Euclid's postulates serve as the foundation for the logical development of the entire system. Pragmatic. Pragmatic is an adjective that describes someone or something that is practical, realistic, and focused on achieving practical results or solutions. A pragmatic approach involves considering the practical aspects and consequences of actions rather than being guided solely by theory or ideals. Example sentence: in politics, a pragmatic leader is one who prioritizes practical solutions that can be implemented effectively, rather than getting caught up in ideological debates. Preamble. A preamble is an introductory statement or a brief explanation that precedes a more detailed piece of writing or a document. It is often used to provide an overview, context, or purpose for what follows. Example sentence: the preamble to the Constitution of the United States outlines the fundamental principles and goals that guided the formation of the government and serves as a preamble sets the stage for the specific rights and responsibilities outlined in the subsequent articles. Presumption. Presumption is a noun that refers to an assumption or belief that is taken for granted or accepted as true without proof. It implies making a judgment or forming an opinion based on incomplete or limited information. Example sentence: he had the presumption to assume that I would agree with his decision without even discussing it with me first. Note, in some legal contexts, presumption could refer to a legal inference made by a court based on certain facts or evidence. Procrastination. Procrastination is a noun that describes the act of delaying or postponing tasks or actions that need to be completed. It is often associated with avoiding or putting off important or unpleasant tasks in favor of more enjoyable or less demanding activities. Example sentence: she struggled with procrastination and often found herself rushing to finish assignments at the last minute. Proliferation. Proliferation is a noun used to describe the rapid or continuous growth or increase in number, quantity, or extent of something. It can refer to the expansion or spread of various things, such as ideas, technologies, organisms, or weapons. Example sentence: the proliferation of social media platforms in recent years has transformed the way people communicate and share information. Prudent. Prudent is an adjective that describes a person or action characterized by careful and sensible judgment. It suggests the exercise of good, practical wisdom and the ability to make sound decisions that consider potential risks and consequences. Example sentence: she made a prudent decision to save money for emergencies instead of spending it all on unnecessary purchases. Quintessence. Quintessence is a noun that refers to the purest or most essential form of something. It represents the most perfect or ideal manifestation of a particular quality or concept. Example sentence: she embodies the quintessence of grace and elegance, captivating everyone with her poise and charm. Refurbish. Refurbish is a verb that means to renovate, restore, or improve the condition of something, especially a building, object, or space. It involves repairing, cleaning, and updating to give it a fresh, like new appearance or functionality. Example sentence: they decided to refurbish their old kitchen by replacing the outdated appliances, repainting the cabinets, and installing new countertops. Refute. Refute is a verb that means to prove a statement, argument, or belief to be false or incorrect. It involves providing evidence or logical reasoning that contradicts or disproves the validity of a claim or assertion. Example sentence: the scientist conducted a series of experiments to refute the hypothesis that the Earth is flat, presenting irrefutable evidence of its spherical shape. Relativism. Relativism is a philosophical concept that asserts that knowledge, truth, and morality are not absolute or universal but rather depend on context, perspective, and individual or cultural beliefs. It suggests that there are no objective or fixed standards by which to judge or evaluate what is right or wrong, true or false. Example sentence: cultural relativism is the view that ethical beliefs and practices should be understood in the context of each specific culture, as moral standards vary among different societies. Resilient. Resilient is an adjective that describes the ability of a person or thing to recover quickly from difficulties, challenges, or setbacks. It implies being able to bounce back, adapt, and maintain a positive or strong mindset in the face of adversity. Example sentence: despite facing numerous obstacles, she remained resilient and persevered towards her goals, never allowing setbacks to deter her. Scrupulous. Scrupulous is an adjective that describes someone who is diligent, thorough, and extremely attentive to details. It suggests a strict adherence to moral or ethical principles and a conscientious approach to one's actions. Example sentence: the lawyer reviewed the contract with scrupulous care, ensuring that every clause was scrutinized for potential legal implications. Scrutinize. Scrutinize is a verb that means to examine or inspect something carefully and in a detailed manner. When someone scrutinizes something, they closely observe, investigate, or analyze it with great attention to detail. Example sentence: the researcher scrutinized the data, analyzing every aspect to identify any potential patterns or trends. Shatter. Shatter is a verb that means to break or fragment something violently into multiple pieces. It implies a sudden and forceful destruction that results in the complete separation of an object or substance. Example sentence: the glass fell to the floor and shattered into countless shards. Stagnation. Stagnation is a noun that describes a state of little or no progress, growth, or activity. It refers to a condition of stagnancy or immobility where there is a lack of development or change. Example sentence: the economy experienced a period of stagnation with no significant growth in several key sectors. Status quo. Status quo refers to the current or existing state of affairs, particularly in social, political, or economic contexts. It describes the prevailing situation or condition that is generally accepted or maintained without significant change or disruption. Example sentence: the committee decided to maintain the status quo and not make any major policy changes at this time. Superficial. Superficial is an adjective that means concerned only with surface appearances and lacking depth or substance. It describes something that is shallow, lacking in thoroughness, or not considering the underlying or significant aspects. Example sentence: the politician's speech was superficial, focusing more on empty rhetoric and sound bites rather than addressing the substantive issues. Synergy. Synergy is a noun that refers to the interaction or cooperation of two or more elements, entities, or people to produce a combined effect that is greater than the sum of their individual efforts. It describes a harmonious collaboration where the combined result is more effective, efficient, or impactful than what each individual could achieve alone. Example sentence: the team's synergy allowed them to complete the project ahead of schedule and surpass their initial objectives. Taboo. Taboo is an adjective or noun that refers to something that is prohibited or considered socially or culturally unacceptable or forbidden. It denotes actions, behaviors, or subjects that are considered to be extremely sensitive, offensive, or inappropriate within a particular society or culture. Example sentence: in many cultures, discussing certain topics, such as death or religion, is considered taboo during social gatherings. Tautology. Tautology is a noun that refers to a statement or expression that is redundant or repetitive because it repeats the same idea or meaning using different words or phrases. It is the unnecessary repetition of information in a way that adds no additional or new meaning to the statement. Example sentence: saying free gift is a tautology because a gift, by definition, is already something given without cost. Tenacious. Tenacious is an adjective that describes someone who is determined, persistent, and unwilling to give up or let go of something they desire or pursue. It denotes a strong and unwavering determination to achieve a goal or cling to a belief or idea. Example sentence: despite facing numerous setbacks, she remained tenacious in her pursuit of her dreams and eventually found success. Terrestrial. Terrestrial is an adjective that relates to the Earth or its inhabitants, specifically referring to things that are found or occur on land as opposed to water or air. It can also be used to describe organisms that live on land. Example sentence: the terrestrial ecosystem in the forest is home to a diverse range of plant and animal species. Unkempt. Unkempt is an adjective that describes something or someone as being messy, disheveled, or untidy in appearance or condition. It implies a lack of order or care in personal grooming, organization, or maintenance. Example sentence: the abandoned house had overgrown weeds and an unkempt yard, showing signs of neglect. Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism ethical theory focused on maximizing overall happiness and minimizing suffering through actions' consequences. Example sentence: the utilitarian principle guided her decision to choose a career that aimed to make a positive impact on the greatest number of people. Vilify. Vilify is a verb that means to speak or write about someone in an extremely negative and disparaging manner with the intent to harm their reputation or character. It involves making harsh or malicious statements about someone, often in an attempt to portray them in a negative light. Example sentence: the tabloid newspaper attempted to vilify the celebrity by publishing false and damaging stories about their personal life. Volatile. Volatile is an adjective that describes something or someone as being easily evaporated or vaporized. It can also refer to something that is unpredictable, unstable, or liable to change rapidly and unexpectedly. Example sentence: the volatile chemicals inside the laboratory require careful handling to prevent accidents. Zeal. Zeal is a noun that refers to great enthusiasm, passion, or fervor in pursuing something, often a cause or goal. It is characterized by intense dedication and eagerness to accomplish or promote a particular objective. Example sentence: she tackled her new project with incredible zeal, working late nights and weekends to ensure its success.